There is a silent mistake you may be making every single day. A mistake that doesn't look like a sin. One that feels like you're doing the right thing. But slowly, it weakens your soul. It dries out your faith. And worst of all, you don't even notice. You pray. You attend Mass. You try to avoid sin. You do everything you're supposed to do. Yet, deep down, something still feels off. There is no joy, no peace, no burning desire for God. Your spiritual life feels heavy, dull, mechanical. Saint Josemaría Escrivá called out this mistake over and over again. He saw it eating away at the soul of faithful Christians. Not those who turned their backs on God, but those who kept showing up day after day, with hearts that were no longer fully alive. What is this spiritual mistake? It's turning the life of faith into a checklist, turning prayer into obligation, turning service into performance, doing the right things for the wrong reasons, living out your faith on the surface, while the inside is empty, dry, disconnected from love. This is what Saint Josemaría warned against, a spiritual life that appears holy but is no longer rooted in relationship. It looks good on the outside, but inside, there's no surrender, no intimacy, no hunger for grace. And this is the mistake so many of us make without realizing. We replace devotion with discipline. We choose routine over encounter. We seek perfection instead of presence. And slowly, we drift from God, even while doing everything for Him. If you've ever felt this spiritual dryness, this invisible distance from the God you're trying to serve, you're not alone, and there is a way back. Saint Josemaría knew the way. And in this video, we will follow his words to expose the mistake, confront the truth, and rediscover the one thing that gives your faith life again: love. Most people think their biggest spiritual battles happen in moments of temptation, suffering, or weakness. But Saint Josemaría Escrivá warned of something far more subtle and dangerous. The mistake that happens when you're simply living your day, doing what needs to be done, without truly connecting anything to God. A life of automatic gestures, spiritual routines, and good intentions, but without awareness, without surrender, without offering. He called this the invisible erosion of the soul. The truth is, most spiritual mistakes are not loud. They don't happen in big, scandalous moments. They happen in small acts done without love, in prayers said without the heart, in duties fulfilled without lifting the eyes to heaven. This is where the enemy works best. In distraction, in hurry, in the illusion that being busy is the same as being faithful, we fall into a kind of religious autopilot, doing all the right things outwardly, but with a soul slowly going numb. Saint Josemaría denounced this way of living as one of the greatest spiritual risks of our time, because when the soul stops offering, stops being present, stops connecting everything to God, it begins to drift. You can keep praying, working, serving, even helping others, but your heart is no longer anchored, and eventually, you don't even realize that you're just surviving in the faith, not living it. This is the mistake many of us make every day, separating our routines from our relationship with God. We turn holiness into a task instead of a union. We forget that sanctity is not about performance, but presence. Not about doing many things, but doing them with love. And when that love disappears from the center, everything becomes a burden. For Escrivá, every little act mattered. Every dish you wash, every email you send, every commute in traffic could be transformed into an offering, but only if you remembered to offer it. Without that conscious choice, we waste opportunities for grace. We live divided, part of our life for God and the rest for ourselves. And slowly, silently, our faith grows mechanical, tired, and dry. The worst part? We rarely notice. Because everything looks fine from the outside, but inside, the soul is starving for meaning. This is why he urged us to wake up, not just in the morning but spiritually, to reconnect every little thing to God, to stop making this invisible mistake before it costs us everything: our intimacy with God, our peace, our fire. Saint Josemaría Escrivá warned us not just about the obvious sins, but especially about the disguised spiritual mistakes that slowly rot the soul from within. And among the most dangerous is the one that parades as virtue, a spiritual life rooted in self-centered effort rather than humble surrender. This is where many fall. They pray, they serve, they strive, but always to feel better about themselves, not to be truly united with God. They measure their holiness by how busy they are with religious activities, and not by how much they rely on grace. They look for progress, not purification, results, not relationship. And so they end up chasing a version of faith that boosts their ego, not their spirit. The great deception here is that everything appears correct from the outside. You pray daily, attend Mass, read spiritual books, maybe even help others. But inside, something feels off. You feel dry, anxious, constantly in need of affirmation. That's because you've started to confuse performance with transformation. You're performing for God instead of letting Him transform you. Saint Josemaría called this the danger of becoming a plaster saint, a shell that looks perfect but is hollow. This kind of spiritual pride is deadly precisely because it hides under the disguise of devotion. It makes you severe with others, and even more severe with yourself. It disconnects you from grace and attaches you to effort. The root of this problem? A distorted image of holiness. Many imagine holiness as being flawless, unshakable, above weakness. But that's not what sanctity is. Sanctity is about depending on God more and more. It's about becoming like a child who falls and gets up, not someone who never stumbles. It's about doing small things with great love, and not needing to be seen while doing them. When your spiritual life becomes a checklist instead of a relationship, it stops bearing fruit. You may still be moving, but you're not being moved by grace. You may be busy with holy things, but God no longer has space to act within you. And the soul, deprived of that presence, begins to dry up quietly. That's the moment many start blaming themselves more, praying harder, working more. But the fatigue only grows, because what's missing isn't more effort, it's more surrender. You don't need to do more, you need to be more. Be present, be humble, be open. And that begins by breaking this cycle of spiritual self-sufficiency. It starts by admitting, I've tried too hard to earn something that can only be received. I've built a routine for God without inviting Him to dwell in it. I've prayed much, but listened little. This is the turning point. Realizing that holiness isn't about doing everything right. It acts about doing everything with Him. Even your weakness can become sacred if you offer it with love. Even your failure can glorify God if it leads you back to Him. That's what Saint Josemaría wanted us to see. Not a faith of exhaustion, but of surrender. Not a life of spiritual noise, but of divine intimacy. And it all begins by recognizing the mistake we make every day, thinking we can walk the path of holiness without constantly clinging to the hand of the one who called us to it. The most dangerous thing about spiritual mistakes is how invisible they are. No one sees them. Often, we don't even see them ourselves. They're not loud. They don't feel sinful. In fact, they often look like zeal, like discipline, like holiness. But slowly, they starve the soul. That's why Saint Josemaría Escrivá didn't call people to more effort. He called them to more truth, more sincerity, more love. Because only love brings life to your prayer. Only love gives meaning to your sacrifice. Only love transforms duty into delight. You may be doing all the right things, but if your soul feels numb, distant, dry, don't ignore that. Don't push harder. Don't perform more. Stop. Listen. Return to the center. Return to the place where you last felt God's presence and ask, when did I stop doing this with love? God is not impressed by spiritual appearances. He is moved by a heart that longs for Him, a heart that stumbles but keeps returning, a heart that stops pretending. He never asked for perfection. He asked for presence. So today, drop the weight of performance. Let go of the obsession with doing everything right. Let your faith breathe again. Let your prayer be messy, honest, alive. Let your relationship with God be simple and surrendered. Because that's where true holiness begins. Not in what the world sees, but in what God sees when no one's looking. And if you've drifted, If your spiritual life feels like a routine, then this is your moment to begin again, not with pressure, but with peace. Say it to Him right now, even silently. Lord, I want to love you again, not just with my actions, but with my whole heart.